So we're at the UK Intel event and we're here with Gareth from Asus. Now we have the Sabertooth Z97 board here. We also have the Maximus 7 Hero board over there. We're going to focus on the Sabertooth Z97 board here. Now, could you take us through maybe some features that have been added to this specific board, and then go over to the extra features that have come along with the Z97?
Sure. So this is Sabertooth Z97 Mark 1. Mark 1 has thermal armor. Mark 2 doesn't have the thermal armor. That's why there are two differences. So Sabertooth is part of what Asus calls the ultimate force range, tough range. So really tough is about durability, reliability. So we use components that have been tested to military specs. They're very sort of high grade components. So you would sort of look at tough range as if you were running a 24/7 system, or your focus is more on reliability and performance. Also in tough, the kind of general theme of it is configurability as well in terms of cooling. So we have a software suite as well, a lot of options on the board to allow you to configure fan profiles and optimize the cooling really sort of closely. In terms of core features, there's not a huge amount of difference between Z87 to Z97. In terms of additions, we've added SATA Express, it's a new sort of SATA standard, so 10 gigabit a second basically over 6. We co-worked with Intel on our implementation of this to ensure that we had a very stable, high-performance implementation. SATA Express basically plugs in the same way as you would do a normal SATA drive, so it's really easy to use. Z97 also offers M.2, which is the next generation form factor SSD. This board doesn't have it because it tends to be slotted onto the board, and obviously with the armour you can't do that. So looking at the board, obviously probably the most striking feature about it is the thermal armour. So this has kind of a couple of purposes really. One is cooling, there's a back plate as well which you can't see. Another one, to be honest, is aesthetics. I mean, it makes it look really good. A lot of people buy Sabertooth boards just because they look really good. Can't argue with that. We also include dust covers, which if I can not stick my fingers in the fan this time, just sort of slot onto the board, and there's a cover pretty much for every port. So again, if you're in a dusty environment or if it's in a warehouse or whatever, you can kind of cover everything up and make sure everything kind of stays protected. Core features, the board, audio, which you can't see, is kind of hidden under the arm at the back, but it's Crystal Sound 2, so this is an update to a technology that was first on P55, I think. So isolated PCB section on the board, Nichicon capacitors, Japanese capacitors, headphone amplifiers, all designed again to kind of optimize the audio, reduce EMI. We've also got the latest Intel networking chip, the 218, and we use traffic shaping software to help you prioritize the bandwidth depending on what you're doing. So if you're gaming, you can prioritize UDP, TCP packets, whatever. Or if you're media streaming, you can have it optimized for large file transfers over the network and so on.
Not bad though, considering only just
on the armor as well, cooling being one part of it. Is something called flow valve, so these little switches here will open and close shutters, so depending what kind of cooler you're using, so if you're using a traditional HSF like this, which might blow some air sort of down across the CPU socket as well, this will help channel it over the VR.
You guys going to do another video? Yeah, I think so. I'm going to restore the defaults on this.
Or if you're going to use an all-in-one liquid cooler, which obviously doesn't blow any air down, you can install the optional fans, a couple of additional fans that can go on the board. One can go on the rear, and you can close the valves and you can blow air through directly over the VRMs.
What are the dimensions on these fans? Because I know a lot of people have asked me specifically if they can buy fans such as Noctua's NF-A4 and replace them with the stock fans. So is there like a standard size with these fans?
Well, I believe the 40mm fans, whether or not you'd be able to replace them with a third-party fan, I don't know. It depends on the thickness of the fan and the voltage they operate at. I mean, theoretically, no reason why you couldn't.
So if the 40mm fans and they're basically the same thickness, they should be.
They should do, yeah. You know, if they're 3-pin fans and it works to the same sort of voltage ranges and whatever. But the software allows you quite a lot of flexibility over the voltage ranges and the sort of spin ranges, if you like, RPM ranges of the fans as well.
Because I know the Sabertooth line specifically is actually quite popular with people that want to go with noctual fans because they work so well together in terms of the styles. And a lot of people, specifically with, I believe on the original Sabertooth there was a fan section there.
There is this one as well,
yeah. But that specific one was really popular with people that wanted to try and replace that with the A4. So if the A4 does work, if somebody has tested it and knows, leave your comments in the comment section below and let people know so that everyone else can go out with the Sabertooth and add all these noctual fans and really create their own styling with this motherboard, because you know that's really what a lot of these features are here for. So the thermal armor, not just there for temperatures and everything, but it is also there to give you that extra look, and that's really what people want to go for. So is there any other features that you
really a lot of the features to do with the cooling you control through the software interface. So we also have additional thermal probes which you can plug into the board, and you can put these wherever you want, hotspots in your case or whatever you want to monitor. And then through the software interface, you'll be able to see all of the different thermal probes that are on the board and built into the board themselves, and with the additional probes. And you can set your fans, individual fans, to certain temperatures. You know, CPU temperature, graphics temperature, whatever you want to do. Optimize your fan profiles. So there's a huge amount of detail you can go into really with how you configure the cooling of these boards, and that's another really great feature of the Sabertooth boards along with the thermal radar software. So yeah, so in a nutshell, that's the Sabertooth Z97 Mark 1.
I just want to point out a few things. So although we aren't going to really go over all of the extra features like the types of PCI expansion slots, but I do want to point out that there is a right angle USB 3 down here by the starter port, as well as the starter express. So if you are going to be using your USB 3 front panel, that is a perfect location for that. Now I do want to ask a question about the thermal armor, because I know it's quite bulky up around here that you mentioned. Is that going to interfere with any large CPU coolers that people might want to use? Considering that this design is going to go so well with air coolers compared to water coolers, is that going to be?
Well, really, I mean, it's designed to work with both. In terms of, I mean, it's really down to the cooler manufacturers, I suppose, in terms of how they've designed their coolers. So I couldn't give you, off the top of my head, a compatibility list. But as far as I'm aware, it should work with all the major brand HSFs, but obviously, you know, you can close the flow valves and use all-in-one liquid cooling like the Corsair, Hydro Series, or dedicated full loop liquid cooling as well, which obviously works really well with the sort of Sabertooth.
So even though it looks potentially quite bulky, it's not really that different in size compared to the standard cooling around the CPU, so it's not really going to be any different to another board in terms of
no, it generally shouldn't be. I mean, the exclusion zones around the socket we've obviously kept to, so I mean, you know, some enormous HSFs might have a problem, but again, you know, it's more, I suppose, down to cooler manufacturers than board manufacturers to determine.
So that is the Sabertooth Z79, yes, Z97. Sorry, the Z97 Sabertooth board. Let's move on to the Maximus 7 Hero.